4th of July Declaration of Independence from crony capitalism and its captive, extremely large government providing mediocre services. So I wanted to end this note on a hopeful note. In order to evaluate anything, you need to have a framework. So this framework, I think, is perfectly reasonable. This is an argument towards libertarian communitarianism, which here in California means that progressives vote for Ron Paul to deliver the Democratic primary to Ron Paul, the Republican primary rather, because the Democratic primary is going to be foregone conclusion unless something very surprising happens. So it's a cheap way to make a huge impact on Ron Paul's chances. And Ron Paul offers us a remedy to most of the grievances, although the medicine might be too stiff, and that's where this model comes in. So we basically measure all activity along two X and Y axes. The X coordinate is non-productive to productive economic activity. So we look at economic activity just like we look at our order of needs. Like the order of needs is that you start with food, clothing, and shelter and eventually get to luxuries and education and health care. But you won't feel those needs until you've filled the more basic needs. So in this case, you move into its higher and higher order activities as you get into more and more productive activities, research and development, great art, and talented workmen, the highest production. So I organize that here according to classical things, primary is agricultural, forestry, and mining, secondary, manufacturing, tertiary. And here's we get into a division. Tertiary is services, technically. But I only classify teaching, medicine, and very appropriate levels of non-production for safeguarding property and life. But we are way out of control on that by tolerating a society rife with crime and poverty and poor education and poor ability for people to feel secure about their community and their livelihood. Of course, we're going to have to need a large security state and attacking other countries, 1 million dead in other countries. We're pretty much the only aggressor in the last 10 years, so we're going to drive all the other countries into the hands of BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, especially now that we're talking about confiscating all of Libya's money and giving it to their own rebels, which is going to sure reduce deposits in Western accounts for third world countries that don't have the best human rights record, which is not in the interest of even a simple Republican small government Yankee. He wants to have good trade opportunities. He doesn't want to have prejudice against him. So in this simple Yankee virtue, we look at truly productive activity. Now in the non-productive area, we have we have 10 times more people locked up than anybody else per capita. Terrible education statistics we talked about before. So we've created this welfare class with this management system over them, and then this warfare state that's doing permanent security. And if that sounds propagandist, this is very sinister. And then the fact that we have the most prisoners in the world. Only a numbskull would say that our people are like 6 times more prone to crime than any other country. So with that said, let's go to the positive side. It's very simple. To save the world, all you have to do is buy local, and this quadrant system will help guide you. So we don't want people doing non-productive work, because we have to pay basically from our production for their work. So we want everyone up here in the productive functional quadrant, and then we would have no taxes because everybody would produce more than they needed. There would be nobody on the recipient side. Everybody could take care of themselves, as Ron Paul likes to say. There is a problem with that, though, which is the concentration of wealth. Since the 1970s, we haven't really gotten much in the way of wealth gains. Here's the wealth distribution. Actually, our part of it has gone down, while their part has gone up. And when I say ours, I mean it's just not right, because these people already are extremely wealthy, and it gets worse and worse. 15% of net worth here, of the whole 80 bottom percent. It just is not the way the Jeffersonian conception of our republic was, and it's a preferable vision to what we have today. So that's where we have to go libertarian, eliminate the out-of-control systems, and our solution is to simply buy local, and we'll get to that. So then you have this coordinate here, which is from non-functional to functional. And non-functional people are people that, due to circumstances, injury, addiction, psychosis induced from some trauma, or they're not able to fully participate in society at their potential, which is true for all of us to some degree. Nobody's 100% fit, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, physically. But this is another coordinate system. It's a relative measure. So the non-productive and non-functional people are people that are deployed in a non-productive area, including doing nothing, because non-production is doing nothing, or worse, it can be harmful. And this is a problem of creating jobs instead of eliminating jobs. We're creating a system based on growth at any cost. We end up creating all of this stuff. So we've got the welfare warfare state. Then we've got culture driven around breeding needs for things we don't really want. It would be better to just be able to go fishing, but we end up with all this junk and don't go fishing. And we don't have to build an incentive into the system for people to consume this stuff if we're based on work elimination and personal independence. And then all of these guys who feed off of us, by buying local, we can get rid of them, unless they become extremely clever. And then, so here's our people. We want to transfer these non-productive, non-functional people into the productive, functional sector. We want our whole society built around that idea, which is an excellent education, clean, healthy places for people to live, not slums, and that's about it. All you need is give them a good education, have them not grow up in a slum, and provide some method for them to be able to have access to the things they need to not be alienated. And that's where we get into the next part of this. So what I propose is that you either have a prosperous local community or you create this network of utility co-ops. This would allow everyone to have access to education, medicine, food, housing, and in other words, the things that are needful, the utilities. And to supply all of this would take 25% of our workforce. So the problem is, why not eliminate work instead of creating work? It's logically more efficient. However, the people in the community have to own the mechanisms that are getting more efficient. Otherwise, they suffer when the mechanisms get more efficient in some ways. However, obviously, with competition, these things can be achieved. So by buying locally, we can counter the influence, and we also have to make a commitment not to pay any more taxes than we have to. So that's the lens by which we run it. This can be achieved with a 25% time contribution. We can drain the welfare warfare state. We can do that by minimizing our taxes. Let's see if I have anything on that before I terminate this session. Okay, so this is an example of, yes, I have two other things. So in the case of education, the whole key to our country is a good education. Yeah, because really that in and of itself, combined with some basic common sense egalitarianism to the needy in our community to help provide them with housing and help provide them with medical care, creates a wealthy community. You don't have to go outside of your community to provide food and clothing. You can create local cottage industries, and it doesn't matter if they're more expensive because it can reconnect your communities. But you have to get to having a new non-compulsory ways of interacting that are still civic-minded. Companies should have a charter that you look at and say, how are you serving the greater good? This as a tradition, and you need to build a culture that supports those virtues. So this is a framework that I propose for, for my children, for having a complete a complete education, character, stamina, inquiry, curiosity, logic, of course fine and performing arts, rhetoric, equanimity, self-discipline, then of course optimizing your own management of yourself, emotional intelligence. And so you look at that, and then you look at the idea of perhaps having a fast light rail system that was faster than cars. You could have a car exchange that was free, that you were a member of a network of, or you could simply park your car at one of these transport hubs. During school hours, you could have a safety patrol, and you could have these specialty hubs at each of these light rail intersections that has housing and shops, and also it has a specialty for a workshop and an R&D in school for a particular discipline. It could be, for example, and then potentially a medical clinic or one of the co-op services, and so that way your kid could actually literally vote with vouchers, for example, which class he wanted to enroll in each morning and go to different campuses that specialized, because we don't need this one-size-fits-all issue. And also, by eliminating work, the teachers can do research instead of having to teach class, because we can just take the greatest lecture ever made by Richard Feynman on quantum thermodynamics. Kids watch it, and then the lecturer comes in afterwards and does equations and Q&A. You don't have to create employment. You can eliminate it and retain the benefits, because it only takes 25% time. This can all be done, and then you can eliminate property taxes, because this can be done on a non-compulsory opt-in basis. Thank you. That's our solution out of this empire. We want a republic, not an empire.